Okay, everyone, we are going to call together the Sustainability Subcommittee meeting for the Concord Middle School project. It is called to order. It is 9:28 on Thursday, February 6th. Welcome, everyone. Sorry we're taking a little bit of a break after our previous meeting. My goal is still to get us out of here in 40 minutes here. So I don't want to run too far over our 10 o'clock time. I mean, to set the stage, the primary goal of today is to share reactions and responses to SMMA's presentation last week, now that everyone's had a few days to think about what we saw or what SMA presented to us. And more specifically, with an objective for the meeting is to finalize 2 bullet recommendations that will be made to the full committee next Thursday on the 13th. And talk about, we also are going to be making a little bit more of a presentation to the full committee on the sustainability items that this subcommittee is recommending. So those are our goals. I guess I have some proposed language for bullet points up on the screen that I would like to hash through. Before we do that, I'm hoping we could just go around quickly and have everybody kind of share what their big kind of takeaways were from SMMA's presentation last week. So, I don't know, does anybody want to start?
I'll start.
Thanks, Russ.
Break the ice here. Just costs was, kind of a red flag for me, and that battery storage, maintenance costs, that is, not costs up front, but after, what the district is left with. That just needs to be, I think, thought.
So when you say maintenance costs, specifically on, I don't remember so much the specific maintenance
well,
costs.
we talked about the battery storage,
Right.
There's some solar power, all the renewable energy, and, I know the district does have a solar power panel now at the Willard School that when I first got here, they were having an issue with, and we found out that we own it,
Yes,
and, we had that discussion with Concord Light.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think in the conversation, we just have to really have some good foresight and look, what are we left with after the fact as far as cost?
Great.
So
Thank
I
you,
don't know
Russ.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
I think my overall takeaway from
Yeah, sure.
the sustainability was that they were shooting for LEED silver, that's the baseline. And then they were gonna pick and choose things from Passive House, things from Net Zero, and kind of create something a little different. There will be no Passive House certification, that was I believe our recommendation. But that if you were going towards LEED silver, that's where the platform was gonna be. That's pretty much where everybody is right now for the MSBA. They weren't leaning towards LEED gold or LEED platinum. But by choosing different energy efficiencies from the net zero energy and the Passive House to create something that would be efficient for the entire building, but not necessarily just going down one avenue. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, I guess I would respond slightly. So I would agree that LEED silver was the baseline, and I think they also said LEED platinum was not an option.
Right.
Because of the inability for the project to claim location and linkages.
Correct.
So LEED gold was an option, and I think they had some numbers associated with that cost. So unfortunately, we haven't received, and SMMA isn't here today, but we haven't received the numbers that they presented to us last Thursday.
On what aspect?
So the slides that they showed last Thursday.
Right, yeah.
I don't have
those
copy
either.
of
I have
that.
not
So
seen them. I requested them, I haven't received them.
so hopefully we can get those, especially for before the presentation tomorrow with the lead.
So if I can, I wasn't at the meeting,
Yeah.
so I wasn't at the presentation, but I did see a draft of the slides, and
I have a copy of them.
I would have a question, or I would have a concern with the dollars that were represented there. I just don't think the costs were fully, or fully covered, if you will. There was
The dollar for certification?
the dollars, just the premium that you're gonna pay to go from a basic building to a stretch code building to a net zero building to a passive, like, I just, we had some questions before the presentation with SFMA internally.
Right.
Just things like, are you going 149 versus 149A has not happened yet. There's some premiums there. I just don't know if all the premiums were captured in the numbers they provided.
That's what
Yeah, I think that the tricky position, like, and I want to get back to Julie's comments. We're presenting to the League of Women's Voters tomorrow, and cost is certainly an issue or a question that in everybody's mind. And at this point, those are the costs we have.
Yeah, I think we have to
They're
really
incomplete. Yeah.
say they're not a solid number yet.
So you think we don't share those numbers at this point?
I don't think you share them. I think you say we've looked at a preliminary idea, but we need more, I agree with Mike, we need more backup on what that looks like. Cause I think, my worry, Matt, is that the big numbers that are in there are gonna go out. And without the backup and the understanding of, do we save money down the line and we can operationally offset something? Without all of that, you might get such a knee-jerk reaction to those big dollars that are in there, it could really spin this.
Which dollars are you referring to?
Well, there's a one-
5,000 one or?
That one of the slides has a $5.9 million.
Okay, so let's try to, can we try to take some of these numbers and parse them apart?
I guess that's the question, can we without?
Well, I think we
assessing
can,
it?
I think there's some things we can say about these numbers.
Can I just jump in with
Yeah,
like
sure.
broader feedback? I mean, my takeaway from the meeting is, first of all, I was really impressed with their presentation. I feel like they gave us a lot of good information about, what would passive house mean for a school, knowing that this, there isn't a school that we can look at. I felt like they answered a lot of my questions about, and some of the things that have come up about, like, well, are there multiple options when you have to go through the public process? And I feel like they alleviated a lot of the concerns there, that it is doable. I think that it was really insightful too to hear from Martine the comparison between what, a base code is not an option for us, we're a stretch code community. So the difference that we're making is between the new stretch code, which we'll face, and these stricter energy requirements. And we're getting, at minimum, LEED Silver, which incorporates a lot beyond energy. So to me, the question is, what do we want, how far do we want to go on the energy piece? We're getting all that other great LEED Silver stuff. I think it was really good to hear that LEED Platinum is not an option just because of our location, not because of really anything else. And so really just it's the choice of which approach do we want to take and which specific goals we want to set for some of the energy pieces, because that's a distinguishing factor. A lot of the other stuff is really just a given that we're going to get all of those efficiencies about water and accessibility and transportation and the like. So to me, it felt very, I felt like it felt very comfortable to say, like, what we're trying to do is not so far above and beyond what we have to do anyway and what is MSBA standard. So it's just a matter of choosing which approach we want to take. And I think we're finding some of the numbers. Aside from the renewable piece and the solar piece, it seemed like, it comes down to some consulting fees and certification fees, which really just ensure that you get Like, it seemed like a quality control.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not sharing numbers on anything else yet, so I would
Right.
hate to have that jump out at
Well,
people and
that's
get a
right.
negative
And
reaction.
that's where I'm saying, they're saying, in their presentation, they said it's consulting fees, so there's more parts to that aren't in there right now. So, for example, if you're doing a net zero ready building, the electrical room is gonna be larger because you have to have panels, you have to have things. You might be running conduits to a roof. If you're looking for net zero ready for solar panels on the roof, the structure might get larger. You know, there's a lot of factors in there that need to be considered.
Yep.
And so I think right now, we're targeting the end of feasibility is the end of March. At that point, we're gonna have estimating teams engaged. That's when we have the opportunity to say, base building is stretch code, if I add this to it, and it's not just energy efficiency, it's everything. If I do an X square foot gym, it's this cost. What if I increase it by, 1,000 square feet? What if I increase it by 5,000? You're gonna be able to have people who do numbers for a living provide that information to us. And I think at that point, I would feel more comfortable starting to potentially share numbers at that point, because it's not conjecture, that's literally what these people do for a living, is the
Right.
estimators.
And I
Okay,
think
so-
that's a good point to put it in the context of, we don't know the cost of anything, right?
Anything.
You know, it's not just
Right.
sustainability
That's
that we're talking about costs, it's how big, all the features of the school would
Yeah.
influence the
Yes.
cost of it,
Yeah.
so. I mean, I do think that we can give some examples of other projects that
Absolutely.
have met some of the goals that we're talking about, what have been the cost implications of that? Because people, that's the elephant in the room, people wanna know,
What's the elephant in the room?
for everything,
For everything.
right?
Well,
We're
let's
just
try to
not
net
there yet.
Let's try to net out the solar thing a little bit.
Charlie, if I could, just before we go to
It's a
solar,
quick
I
question.
think Jared
Yeah.
has a question. Yeah.
Just,
Oh.
did I hear correctly during the meeting? I thought over the summer, when we were just talking about passive house and the potential costs, I thought I was hearing 8 to 10% more. I thought they said last week that it was 1%.
Yes.
They did.
That's what I'm saying, that 1%, in my opinion, is not complete. There's
So we need-
1%.
Yeah, I don't wanna just circle without SMMA here to answer, so I think we all agree we need to talk with them.
Well, we don't
further.
know. We don't
That's why
have
we need the
any data.
estimators.
We've got
Well, that's
survey.
why we need to
That's why we
wait
need,
till they're in the room. I don't think a conversation in public
Yeah.
that says we don't know for 10 minutes makes a lot of sense.
I totally agree. I guess without going down that road though, but, and I don't know about the 8 to 10%, but I think the 1%, like even if you double or triple it, that's still 3%. Right? So, I think that that's important, that we aren't talking 8 to 10%, that we're talking a low single digit percentage.
For sure, yeah.
So, yeah, if I could jump in, I don't think we had a framework for any of these dollar discussions. There were no framework, so it was like a chaotic type of discussion. If you take just the solar thing, what's the basis for those numbers? You have to have requirements behind those numbers. So we don't know what any of the requirements were that were driving them, number one. Number two, this is not a cost that we're concerned with because this is a PPA. So we're left with the issue of solar ready. Well, what is solar ready? We haven't agreed on what that is, and we haven't agreed on what's in the code and what's not in the code. So the only cost of solar ready is what we plan to require to create solar ready that's not already required. So these numbers, the numbers on zero ready are, the solar numbers, I would just put them aside. I wouldn't present those to anyone. And I think getting back to some of the comments Kate made, I think that what I liked about the presentation was the column on passive house, or actually the column on passive house and net zero that detailed the specifications for this, basically for the schedule. You know, what walls, ceilings, and so forth, windows, U factors, and so forth. I think that cost for passive house has to be a function of the difference between the passive house column and the stretch code column. You have to say, well, what does it cost? We could build a stretch code school and have a EUI of 40 to 50, and what does that cost? Okay, well, it costs so much more to do these other attributes. We don't have that. So we can't talk 1%, 2%, 3%, we can't do that. That would be number one. Number two, we haven't agreed on what we want. So how do you compare when you don't know what we want? And number three, I think the certification stuff needs to be fleshed out. I didn't get the sense that the certification numbers were kind of well articulated. And furthermore, there are some credits that you can get that aren't included. You know, alternative energy credits from the Commonwealth. Those are big. Those go on forever. I guess the town doesn't give any credit for us putting in air source heat pumps, but there is a credit line for AECs that we should have that would discount or offset some of those extra certification costs. But I didn't really understand these certification fees. They're broken out, and I think those need to be straightened out.
Okay.
So I guess that would be my reaction, but I thought it was pretty good stuff for a start.
Thanks, John. Yeah, Frank.
At the meeting, that meeting.
Yep.
They made recommendations, and they were going to give us a printout of what their recommendations was. Have you seen it?
Oh, well, I think part of the issue, so Kristen, our project manager, is on vacation this week. And we had the meeting on Thursday, and I'm sure she had a hectic Friday, and is on a well-deserved vacation this week. So I think that's part of the reason why we're operating a little bit in a vacuum here. And it wouldn't be an issue, except that we've got the legal women's voters presentation.
Well, I think,
tomorrow,
and
so.
we're having the same conversation on the other information we're bringing to the meeting, but you're just staying really high level. You know, I'm bringing them a design, educational design without any numbers to it. I'm talking conceptually, philosophically, a little bit of logistics, bringing them concrete examples. If they're gonna ask cost, and I'm gonna say, we don't know
We
yet.
don't know.
We don't.
And I think that's okay, that's where we are in the project, and I think this is a great opportunity to share all the conceptual pieces we heard last week, which were really helpful.
Yep.
Because now we're starting to all know what we're talking about more.
Right.
Stay at that high level.
Yeah.
But we don't have to say 1 to 3 or anything else,
No,
because we don't know.
exactly.
Okay, good.
And I guess just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I mean, I guess what I heard was they weren't necessarily making a recommendation. They were saying that about which path to go. They were saying that net zero energy, and they had associated cost with that, but they said that if we did net zero energy ready, they would also include some of the elements of passive house, such as they specifically called out blower door testing, quality control inspections, and thermal analysis, because they felt like those components of passive house bring value to the net zero energy ready effort. But I don't think they necessarily were recommending one strategy over another.
Is there a certification for that column? I don't know.
That I think was their point, is that there is not a certification, and
So you don't have a complete,
there's
Right.
not a robust process to
Right.
that, and so they would adopt components of other certification programs in order to provide that quality control.
Right, and I think that's where I was saying, they're picking a little from this and a
Yes,
little from that,
exactly.
and kind of putting it all together
Yep.
to create a package for you
Right.
that works with what it is you're looking for, but there'll be no formal certification
Right.
attached to that.
well, that was not necessarily what was said though, was it?
I think that's a decision we have to make
What we need to
as a
figure out.
full committee is, do we want to pursue a certification? The value I
Right.
see in pursuing a certification is quality control. You make sure that you get what you ask for. And even, what struck me was when Lois said, well, if you decide you don't actually wanna spend the whatever $30,000 on the certification for passive house, don't tell your contractor, because,
Right,
you know, then you're not, you know, then they'll kinda.
you won't hold them to that standard.
Right, and so to me, that was really striking, of like, saying you're gonna do it really is important, making sure you get what you ask for. So I think, I mean, obviously there's a cost to that, and that's a decision that the committee will have to make, but I think there's a lot of value in pursuing a certification and make sure you get what you want.
You could do the whole passive house column, and simply then say, we're gonna do, in addition to that, we're gonna do, solar ready. Solar ready plus the passive house column, including certification of passive house, would be one possible combination. I don't think they ruled that out.
No, I don't think they ruled anything out.
Okay.
They were open to everything.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I think was I don't wanna say brushed under the table, but, maybe brushed under the table, is the best way for me to say it, was there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve for your contractors, for your subcontractors.
Oh, I don't think they're
I know, I
under the
think they
table at
brought that
all.
up.
They brought it
They
up,
brought that up.
but they said, oh, well, we can manage that.
So I
It's
don't
not
think we
as-
wanna sit here and negatively talk about what the presentation was or wasn't, that's making me uncomfortable. Maybe this meeting now is about what do we need to be more informed to make a recommendation, and then we can gather that list and share it with SMMA. Maybe that's the productive
Great,
thing to
thank you,
do,
Laura.
because we seem to have a lot of questions still.
Right, and
So why
that
don't we
was,
make that list of questions and,
Great.
that would be something that I
Gather it.
would be.
I think we had asked them to make a list of kind of the elements of LEED silver.
so let's
that
make
would-
that list, yeah.
That would be
Good.
like kind of their baseline design, especially the ones that are outside of energy efficiency, because there is a lot more to LEED. To make sure that that sounds good to us, right? Like, what are we getting anyway?
I think the only thing that I was getting to that was more about the additional costs
Okay.
associated with that.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Additional cost, yeah.
So I think,
I don't think we really got, I don't think there was really any discussion on that.
so.
No, that's where I was kind of headed.
Question one is, what are the elements of LEED silver that we're gonna be chasing? Question two, then kind of, I would say almost, what are the elements of net zero that we're chasing? What are the elements of pacifiers that we're chasing?
That's right. That's
What are the,
exactly
you
right.
know, look, just go right down the list and it's that same question, so we have the first 5 questions there, because we have 5 columns here, you know.
Yep.
What are we getting from each of these? What would we, and maybe the counter to that is, what in these would you not recommend us chase? You know, so for example, there's certain things in LEED that would allow you to get to that platinum level that, for lack of a better term, is you're buying the LEED point just to get the LEED, because you want that platinum plaque on your building.
Yeah.
You know, there's some things that it just, the efficiency isn't there, that the return on investment isn't there. So is there anything like that in these? I'll give you an example. I did a job for Northeastern University, and they were trying to get LEED platinum, and they were gonna do hot water through solar. And the return on investment was 22 years, and the expected life of the solar panels was 18 to 20. So it was literally gonna cost, you know, the return on investment was never gonna be achieved. So they were just spending money because they wanted to be efficient, you know, be energy efficient, but in reality, they said, it's actually costing us more to do that, so they chose not to do that
Yeah.
one item.
And they were pretty clear that we can't get to platinum because of our site. It's not, like,
Right.
even if we did
Because of the location,
every other point,
Mhm.
we wouldn't get there because our site is not urban.
Right.
You know, it's not
It's like
connected.
35 points or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, a lot
So-
of it is the site.
I wanna know, in these other categories, is there something under the living building challenge that is site restricted, or something that they wouldn't recommend us? Doesn't mean we can't go for it, but, you know, what would you recommend, as the first set of questions, what would you not recommend as a second, so that we can understand that? And if they don't recommend something that you want, then it leads to the next discussion, right?
One of the things that I think did come out, and it was thrown up a couple of times for clarification, was to go after one of these processes that require that possibly pursue certification, but see what you can drag along out of LEED. And then, you know, use what you can out of what you want to do to pull the LEED pieces that make sense.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think they said, you know, like, if you, for example, pursue passive house, you're gonna check a lot of the lead boxes in the process. And you'll at least get silver, and you might even get gold, because you are doing a lot of things that check their boxes too, right? There's a lot of overlap
Mhm.
Yeah.
in these certifications.
Oh, yeah.
You
So-
know, it's nuanced. and-
When you net it out, I don't know whether this is where you want to go with this conversation, but when you net it out, it seems that passive house requires more than net zero, the net zero column, and has certification built in. And living building challenge looks like it's potentially a little bit beyond us in terms of some of the requirements. So I would just knock that one out, basically say, look, we can't do that one. And I think you've got enough richness in passive house plus the passive ready piece from the net zero column to kind of get to where you want to get. And then you're going to pull along the pieces from LEED, and life is good. That kind of was my read coming out of that. But what I wanted to know specifically was for the pieces in Passive House that exceed the net zero items, what's basically going on there in terms of returns and benefits? For example, you've got
I think that's Mike's point, right?
That's my point.
Infiltration.
My point is, what would you recommend to chase? What would you not recommend to chase? And then the next question is, how much do those items cost? You know, and that cost, again, I think is getting estimators to help weigh in on that.
But the cost is gotta be against stretch code, it shouldn't be against net zero, per se, right?
It would either be
I suppose it
versus a
could.
base building or a stretch building, it depends on if you're considering, I mean, to your point, if we're a stretch
Yeah,
community, maybe you don't need to go any further back than that, if you will.
right, I mean, I think there's absolutely no point in
Right.
committing to something that we legally can't. And we have to.
We appreciate you
Well-
eliminating those options.
Well, I think the only reason why you might compare it is if you're looking at historic costs of other buildings and how things are, some of those other buildings may not even fall into the threshold. So if you try to compare apples to apples, sometimes you start where everybody is and then you work on from there, so.
Well, and I think when we're talking about particular systems and comparisons between our options of, for example, like an HVAC system, like a VRF versus a geothermal, like looking at the life cycle costs for us, right? Like that's most important.
And I think that that's,
Full picture.
when we talk cost, that's a key component is there's 2 rounds of cost, or maybe 3, right? There's construction costs, there's operational costs, and then there's life cycle costs. And the operational life cycle are kind of hand in hand, if you will, but I think that that's important because if you have to spend X dollars, you know, $1 more during construction to save $2 later, that's kind of a no-brainer. You know, if it's $1 more now to save $1 later, now you've got to weigh, you know, some other factors in there. You know, everybody's going to spend more now to save more, even more later. You know, it's when you start to get to those, well, I'm spending $1 now, but I'm only going to get 90 cents on the dollar later. Well, but I'm also helping the environment and I'm also meeting the goals of the community, you know, then, you know, those are the type of, you know, the low-hanging fruit is the easy stuff to pick. It's when you get into more complicated.
But that's why we asked her
Yeah.
for the recommendation.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had it, we could have a discussion.
Do you communicate those requests to SMMA or do we need to? Okay.
Yeah, they can do that. So I'm writing, I have round of 1 questions is elements of fill in the blank to be, you know, that you recommend being chased. Item 2 is elements of all of these that you would recommend not chasing and maybe and why. And maybe it's and why on both of them, because I think if they're gonna recommend something to us, we're gonna ask, well, why are you recommending that, right? And then, is there a cost of the certification, and if so, give us a breakdown of that, and so we can better understand that. And then overall costs, not just of a certification, but of the premium from the design contract to the premium from the construction contract. And then, to your point, the last part of that is the operational cost and the life cycle analysis. So I think if we can get that information across the board here, it's a lot. I mean, it sounds like it's 4 questions, but it's volumes of information.
Yeah, and I think going forward, this committee should only meet with SMMA in the room. I just think that we,
Just so you know, they were supposed to be here. I'm not sure if the weather maybe.
Okay. I just think that
Yeah.
should be our standing practice. So I thought they were supposed to.
They said yesterday on the phone that, so I don't know what happened. I was gonna try and chase it down, but I didn't.
We'll find out.
It was a good presentation, though. I think we should be
It was a very
clear.
good presentation.
I thought they did a very good job
We
of where
want
we
to
are in
make
the
sure
process.
we're acknowledging.
But Brian, quick public comment and then we're gonna move on to vote.
So I just wanted to add to the conversation that I talked to Martine afterwards and I told her, I said, just tell them what you want to do. Because she felt her position was to educate you on the options without guiding you to a decision. And the conversation I hear here is they didn't give us anything to, you know, as a decision to then say yes or no to, so we're all left stranded. So I think the question back to SMMA should be very much, what do you recommend? And give us a clear guidance on what you think we should do, and then you guys can pick that apart. And they give them the comfort to go forward with that recommendation.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, so I know what Tim's been saying to them, which is probably pull back from that, educate us all, and then help guide us through the process to decide, so that's probably why we're sitting here where we are, is they're
It's that
trying to
balance.
hear where that balance is, and I think we left it a pretty informed place last time, and let's not rush to get a recommendation, just.
No, we wanna know, why.
Sure.
Why should we have those more expensive windows? We don't wanna know exactly that we should have them, that's a recommendation. We wanna know, what is the benefit?
Yeah.
And what are the numbers associated with going from A to B to C in terms of quality and performance,
That's exactly it.
right? Because we don't have that data now.
Okay. In the interest of meeting Tim's charge of providing a recommendation from this subcommittee for the 2 bullets to be included in the charter, I'd like to propose this language, so it would be these 2 bullets right here. The request is for two bullets, one kind of big picture about our sustainability goals, and then one is a process on how to do that. So I'll just read this aloud here. The CMS building will pursue a green certification. So I think we should talk and vote on that right now. If we, not naming a specific one, but do we at least now agree with the concept of pursuing some type of certification? To ensure design rigor and construction quality, energy goals of the project include super energy efficient, EUI of less than 25, excluding the kitchen, and we can talk about that. Schematic design, passive house software modeling, we can talk about that. Reduced embodied carbon, 20%, all electric and solar ready. So maybe we, I don't know, are there?
You wanna get the language first before you vote on the pieces?
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have any comments on any parts of that language?
I have a comment on one piece.
Please, try it.
When we talked about the kitchen, when we were discussing the kitchen in here, I think the intent was to make sure we didn't miss the requirements of the kitchen, that we did a good analysis, and that we basically looked at the elements to be sure we had all the bases covered. However, the EUI was a building EUI, it wasn't excluding anything. So the notion of the kitchen was to call that out as requiring a separate analysis, just so that we were sure that we got that right. But the EUI wouldn't have an asterisk on it.
So you'd like to delete this part
It's for
right
the
here.
whole, it's for the whole building. Which would be consistent with the way EUIs are used.
Okay.
So I think we were talking about a range of EUI last
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
right?
According to my notes here, it says the EUI is 25 to 30. You want less than 25. However, they recommended that they use a range. It was a conversation that Lois had regarding multifamilies use 50 EUI and office spaces use 40. She was saying a range of 25 to 30 would be optimal for this.
She also said that she was very happy with 25 when she was asked directly.
She
I asked her
did,
directly, is 25 a good number? And she said, yes, it was.
she did, but I don't think she was comfortable pinpointing that one specific number. That was.
Well,
the-
I think we ought to figure that out, quite frankly. The EUIs, and that can be a separate discussion, I don't wanna
Yeah.
monopolize it. I think we ought to figure that out, whether it's a range or not. I don't think, quite frankly, that you want a range, but we can come back to that.
I don't think I'm qualified to answer
Yeah.
that.
If I can, just in general, I don't want to, in general, the language we typically would recommend for a charter isn't this specific. It's generally, like, we wouldn't be talking about all of these items, I guess. It just, we would say, you might say a range, what I heard there, a range of 25 to 30 means an EUI under 30, right? I mean, that's, I would say under
Right.
30, because.
And that's what happens when you put a range, everyone's gonna go.
Well,
Right.
then you get into, okay, that's 20% higher, 30 is 20% higher than 25, that's a lot of energy. What are we trying to do here?
Just because you say 30 doesn't mean you can't do 18.
So,
I think, to me, if you put this in the project charter, and you end up putting gas in the kitchen, you failed. Because you said an all-electric building, and you now don't have an electric. So I just caution about being as specific as that language is, I think. Keep it at a higher level, green certification, EUI under something, work towards passive house modeling, like, even the modeling, like passive house gold, I don't know, it's your decision on how specific you wanna get. I just think typically what we see in charters is more broad terms, and, I'll go to something completely off topic. A project value of 80 to 100. Does that mean if we can get it for 75, we're not gonna do it? No, we're gonna still strive for better. This is, like, when you're doing energy code or building code, that's the worst you can do, right? It doesn't mean we can't do better. So I just think that the charter, to a certain degree, is kind of like that. This is the minimum we need. It's not the all-encompassing.
Yeah, and we can certainly debate basically. I guess my response to that, Mike, would be that without guidance and without setting a target to shoot for, then we're not giving clear direction to the design team. And I agree with you that typically projects aren't this specific. We're also struggling with finding projects that are demonstrating completing the goals that we're talking about, and I think that's in part because they're not setting clear, ambitious goals early on.
Do you
So
wanna
the
call
goals
it
are
a, do you wanna call it a
So
target?
why do you say,
I mean, I think
if you didn't get this done, you failed? Take the EUI, if we had a EUI of 30 and we had a goal of 25, does that mean we failed?
Yes.
No, it doesn't
Yes.
mean that to me.
That's the charter, literally what we discussed at the beginning. So that's what, the charter is the goals of the project. And what we said in the very first meeting of the charter is the goal of what you put in the charter is at the end of the project, if you can check every box, you've succeeded. Maybe to your point, if we don't check every box, it doesn't mean we failed. But the idea is that you want to be able to check all of these boxes. So that's why you put goals in there, but you don't put, it's not the only direction of the design team.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Why not,
one of
just call it a goal then?
I mean, that's, and we did talk about the charter can change and evolve, right?
It can, absolutely.
So my perspective is set an ambitious goal in here, and as we get into the further decisions, if we find that we're making a decision that is not realistic to meet this goal anymore, then we change our charter. But if we don't set something ambitious, I think we are setting ourselves up to more easily.
That is totally well said. Totally agree with that.
Russ, did you want to add to that?
No, I see you already got it up there, energy goals. I was saying call it a goal or a target, but you already have it. I see. Energy goal of the project
I
includes.
think some of Tim's feedback, they are much more specific than any of the other elements of the charter, so that may be something we still have to look at, is how it fits into the bigger document. And I hear all your points, I'm honest, I don't have the answers, I'm stirring in my head on how we do both, but it is gonna not fit the structure of the other document the way it is right now, and I don't know how we
But these
resolve
are
that.
technical stuff.
Yeah, but I'd like to put in a whole bunch of educational stuff that's that specific, and I'm probably not gonna be able to do that.
See, but I guess my
Okay.
feeling is you
Yeah.
should be able to do that.
Well, but that's not the document to do
Or if,
that, I don't think.
is there
So-
another document that outlines
But, right,
more
what is the other
specifics and
document?
say, like then I think they need to be documented somewhere. If the charter is not the right place for this level of specifics, then it has to be something
That might be the
else.
answer, is.
You know, I'd like to have a goal for
Education, everything.
air changes
It
per
might be
hour.
we need another structure.
We don't need to have that in here, but I think that's a good
Well,
point.
like-
You could have it in a separate place, and I'd be happy with that. I'd be happy taking it out of there if we have it in another separate place that is instructive to the design team, right? It doesn't really matter where it goes. We
I
don't care
think
about
that
it.
it's somewhere.
We just
As long
need
as
it.
we have a level of specifics somewhere that the committee has agreed to, these are our targets, then
And I think to that point, the questions we're asking is the basis of, or the start of what you're talking about. What are you recommending, what are you not recommending? And now you take that and you look at it and say, John, you're not recommending number 7, I want it. You are recommending number 5, I don't know if we really need that. And you're starting to develop that direction from this committee to them. That, hey, this is your recommendations, And we've taken those, we understand those, we might have a bunch of questions back and forth. But when that list evolves, that is the direction that the committee and the community is giving to the design team. Now, the other part of that is always the cost part of it, the backside of it. But, it's the same with the educational program. We're meeting with the educators, we're understanding what your program needs are, what your wants are. There's back and forth, there's questions, and then we're trying to find that sweet spot, there's always that balancing act for everything. So.
Right, for the whole school.
Yeah.
Good discussion.
Yeah, it might not mean we do much at the moment, but,
Well, we still need to make a recommendation.
Well, do we wanna take the,
Yeah, for
do we
inclusion
wanna
for
take
X.
EUI out of here, remove it?
I do not. No.
I
You're
think,
not,
I
okay.
think Matt's suggestion is good, right? It's a goal, and as we.
The goal, as we
If we evolve it. we
change it.
Change it.
I'm happy with that.
These are a lot of elements that
Either
we've
way.
already discussed in developing the RFP, and, if people feel more comfortable with the range, then.
I don't think we wanna have a range that goes up to 30, so. That's not, Lincoln got 23.9, Belmont got 30 with a whole big swimming pool. ML King Open is running at 23.9 actuals. Their demonstrated performance is lower than 25, I know that.
So I'm
I
here,
have the data.
take this out, right, Charlie?
Yes,
That would be your,
I am happy with that language, just as it sits there now, I'm fine with it.
I mean, I think the process is you bring a recommendation to the full
Right.
committee.
Right.
And
and if we wanna set up
talk
another
about it then.
place to put more specific metrics in, then we can move those over.
Are we going with 25 or are we going with 25 to 30?
I hear Charlie lobbying strongly for 25.
And I'm with Kate on the notion that we have a problem with it at some future point in time, we'll change it, but this puts a stake in the ground around what we're really trying to do. If it's proven that we can't do it, we're not unreasonable people, we're gonna, right, we're not gonna, cut our
Right.
nose off to spite our face, obviously, but that's what I don't see a reason why we can't achieve that, quite frankly.
Would the reason be that the design team said they couldn't?
Pardon me?
I thought there was.
Yeah, I think that's, maybe we just bring it to the big committee
Yeah.
when they're in the room, and so is everybody else. Because I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, I'm still just the structure of the charter and the level of detail
Yeah.
there that doesn't exist in the other pieces.
Right.
Let's bring it forward and let everybody talk about it.
Are there any other hang on one second, Brian. Are there any other components? So, we call out specifically green certification, we call out positive house modeling, we call out embodied carbon, we call out all electric, call out solar ready.
And you've
You don't like it?
I would stop probably where your cursor is, period, there, and
Where's the cursor?
after the 25. I just, it just, the specificity of it, I guess.
I think like Laura said, we can suggest it to the committee, and
Yeah.
if they feel like it's too specific for this document, then we move it to some other document, but a lot of these have already been, widely agreed that we're the goal, and it's been, amended to our town meeting article, so I feel like taking it out would be.
Right, I think that's why the solar ready and the electric is in there, because
Yeah.
that was the committee approved amendment to the
So I
to the
think we
funding for where we are right
recommend
now.
that
I
and
think
see what
I think
people
it's a complete statement, I think it's good.
say. And I really like the way you've written the process one.
Well, hang on one second, Brian, did you have a comment on this big picture bullet?
Yeah, I think the original wording was a little better. You actually made a lot of the points I was gonna comment on, which is the all electric solar array. We've gotta stop discussing the cost of solar because the light plant should be taking that cost. But the kitchen, I think we do need to exclude the kitchens. If I remember correctly, I forget his name, the person leading the district's kitchen staff.
Bryce.
He was thinking about using this as a distribution hub, this new kitchen. And that would be a larger kitchen than one would expect for a middle school. So I do want to see all electric for the building, meaning the kitchen will be all electric, but I think EUI calculation should represent the building, and the kitchen is going to be something for the district, just happens to be located in the building. So
Yeah,
that's,
we haven't settled on that, it was an idea in the first few
Yeah.
discussions, we haven't.
Well, that's something that can come
So
back.
that's
If we
a
want to
change.
change it later, we can come back if requirements change. Update it, but I don't think we need to mention kitchen in that paragraph.
but my comment was I do like the detail in the charter.
Linda, thank you, Brian. Linda?
I'm a little confused about what the goal for this is. If it's not to outline what our overarching goals are, then you guys, I mean, I think that it's great the way it is. If we can't quite reach it, then that's understandable, but I think the whole point was to outline what we want to be doing, what we want to try to strive for. If you keep watering it down, then we'll just be striving for that lower level.
Are we
Thank you, Linda.
articulating our goal properly with the language that you see there?
Yes, right now, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, moving on. Any other? So the second bullet point is about process and how we will, move forward. The committee will engage in a robust discussion on sustainability issues grounded in expertise and cost analysis, with the goal of setting clear and ambitious targets for the project to strive for, while not overcommitting to an effort that does not have widespread support. Is there any?
Excellent. I like it.
It's 10:15. I missed my promise of trying to get us out of here by 10:10. I think this gives us what we need to in order to at least send that to Tim and Dawn. And then there'll be many more discussions about it, I'm sure, so.
So as far as the meeting on the 13th, I think originally the idea was that we would have some kind of recommendation to the full committee. I feel like we don't have all of our information, we're not there yet. So what's our next step for moving along in that direction?
Excellent question, Kate. I guess I don't know.
I think
I
you need
think we
another
need
meeting
to-
with SMA before you're ready to do that.
To talk to.
Well, this is this is an interim recommendation, right?
Well, this is a recommendation for the charter,
Charter.
Right.
but as far as a recommendation for, the information that SMA presented to us last
I mean,
time.
like certification
Right,
and
like,
all this
yeah,
kind of
what
stuff.
are all of the specific metrics that we want? We're not there yet, cause we still
Right.
have a lot
I
of
agree with that.
questions for SMA, so it'd be great if we could send
Right.
them, I mean, a request would be if they could send us that stuff ahead of time. I find it really hard to digest and come to a recommendation all in one
Yeah.
meeting, so if they can. get
Yeah, I
that
think,
ahead of
I mean, for next Thursday, I guess we could present an update on kind of where we are, but I don't know, that's a question of the schedule of that meeting. I would think the full committee would be more interested in letting us get to the end and then making a final
Yeah, we haven't
recommendation than
Made that
providing an
agenda for
update.
next week,
But-
so.
It sounded like there was going to be a lot.
There was a lot boiled, yeah, there
Yeah.
definitely was a lot that was getting slated for that, so I actually think it's not a bad thing that this might
This
not be
gets
ready for
pushed,
this
right.
discussion, yeah,
Okay,
We could shoot for March.
yeah.
March meeting.
are there any last comments from the committee?
Matt,
So-
so I have a
So
question.
what are we gonna meet next?
Yes, Russ? Hang on one second, Charlie.
So originally you had up there excluding the kitchen because there's a potential that the kitchen would be using gas.
Yep.
I think emergency power has to be included in there too.
Okay.
Because you heard the gentleman last week, you have battery storage, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record,
Yeah.
but this is just, battery storage only lasts for
3 to 4 hours.
Right, and if you had a power outage that lasted a day in the middle of the winter, you're gonna have pipes freezing, and it's just something that has to be considered.
No, because it's gonna be a super efficient building, Russ.
All right,
That's
okay, just,
You'll be
Well,
able
and
to
Put it in
stay
a-
there for days.
Well, and this is a shelter, correct, we're building this for?
No, I don't.
I think
No.
that is yet to
Okay.
be.
So you just wanna say excluding emergency backup,
And
under all
kitchen.
Very
electric,
expensive.
excluding emergency backup if necessary or whatever.
Yeah, just have it documented somewhere, emergency power has to be part of the conversation,
Right.
along with the kitchen.
Well, I think on the kitchen, what I heard is kind of, we don't know enough about the kitchen, and if a decision is made about, like, does it serve the entire community, or all the other school buildings, then we would go back to Kate's point, we would go back and we would change the charter.
Yeah.
But
It's sort of like
at
having
least this is kind of where we're starting now, because that's such an unknown that we don't wanna account for it in this document yet.
That's right.
But we can in the future.
Yeah,
So I've just added excluding emergency backup. I'm hoping we can take a quick vote, see if there are any other public comments, and then we'll adjourn.
I move to recommend this language to the full committee.
Is there a second?
second,
So all those in favor of recommending the big picture and the process bullet points to the full building committee? Aye. All those opposed?
I'm not formally on this committee, so I don't have to
Okay.
vote.
Me neither.
This isn't meant to be anything other than we don't have votes.
Public comments? Additional public comments? Okay. Do I move to adjourn the meeting?
Wait, what about
Oh,
the
sorry.
next meeting? Do we want to try to schedule that now, or?
We need
We need SMA,
You
yeah,
wanna
and I'd
ask
also
us-
like them to come up with these responses that Mike is gonna request, and I don't know if that's a 2-week or a month thing, so.
I'll defer to them, I'll help you.
Okay.
I think we.
I think it's more than a week or two, I'd say at least a
That's
couple
fine.
weeks.
Right.
I would say, I mean, the sooner the better, I just would love to kind of look at, like, these are our goals, and then we can focus on education and all the other
Yeah.
important.
And ideally, I think if we can get this to you outside the meeting,
Yeah.
and then give you, say, a week to have a look at it, and maybe you start to formulate some questions, so you can say, hey, these are the ones I want you to give me a little bit more information on when we meet. You know, just like you said, it's good for you to get it beforehand to digest. It'd be great to give them the areas that we want to focus on before the meeting as well, so that we're as productive as we can in the meeting.
Okay.
So why don't we set a goal of the next meeting after our February 13th is March 19th? So why don't we set a goal to maybe have a meeting with SMMA at least a week prior to that, so that
Great.
you're able to inform the committee on the 19th.
That would be great.
Thank you, Julie, that's
Right.
great, yep. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
Second from Russ, so it's 10:20 on February 6th, Thursday, and we're adjourning the sustainability subcommittee. Thank you, everyone.